You noticed it gradually, then all at once. Somewhere along the way, silence stopped being something you avoided and became something you craved. Not just preferred, actually needed. Like your whole being was pulling you toward quiet the way a plant turns toward light. You used to fill every moment with sound. Music, podcasts, videos, conversations, anything to keep the silence at bay. The idea of sitting alone with no input felt uncomfortable. Wrong somehow. Like something bad would happen if you stopped the noise. But now silence feels like the only place where you can actually breathe. What changed? Not the world. The world got louder, if anything. More notifications, more demands, more voices competing for your attention every second of every day. What changed was you. Something inside you shifted. And suddenly, all that noise you used to seek out became unbearable. And the silence you used to fear became refuge. This isn't about being antisocial. It's not about hating people or becoming a hermit. It's about something way more fundamental that's happening to your nervous system and your consciousness right now. Let me show you what's actually going on. Think about why you used to need noise. Really think about it. It wasn't just habit. It wasn't just preference. There was something underneath. A reason you couldn't tolerate silence for more than a few minutes without reaching for your phone or turning something on. The reason was this. Silence made you face yourself. When there's nothing coming in from outside, you're left with what's inside. Your thoughts, your feelings, the stuff you've been running from, all the things you haven't processed, haven't resolved, haven't looked at directly. Silence removes the distraction. And when the distraction is gone, everything you've been avoiding comes to the surface. For most people, that's terrifying. So they keep the noise going. Constant input, constant stimulation. Not because they love the noise, but because they can't handle what happens when it stops. But you've changed. Something inside you has processed enough, released enough, settled enough that silence no longer feels threatening. It feels clarifying. The things you were avoiding, you've started looking at them, or they've dissolved on their own. Either way, they're not chasing you anymore. So when you sit in silence now, you're not confronted by 1,000 unresolved feelings demanding attention. You're just there, present, clear. And it feels better than anything the noise ever offered. This is a massive shift. Most people don't recognize it because it happens gradually. But it's one of the clearest signs that something fundamental is transforming in how you relate to yourself and reality. Here's what's really happening. Your nervous system is changing its baseline. For years, your body has been tuned to a certain level of stimulation. It got used to constant input, noise, activity, interaction, information, flowing in all the time. That became your normal. And when that input dropped below a certain level, your nervous system interpreted it as danger. Silence meant isolation. Isolation meant threat. So your body created discomfort to push you back toward connection, toward noise, toward safety in numbers and sound. This is ancient wiring. For most of human existence, being alone and quiet meant you were vulnerable, separated from the group, exposed to predators. Your nervous system evolved to make solitude feel uncomfortable, so you'd seek out others. But now your nervous system is recalibrating. It's discovering that silence isn't danger. It's reset. It's not isolation. It's integration. It's not vulnerability. It's strength. And once your body understands this, everything changes. The pull towards silence isn't you becoming withdrawn. It's your system recognizing what it actually needs to function well. Like a computer that finally figured out it needs to stop running programs in the background to work efficiently. You're not avoiding life by seeking silence. You're optimizing for deeper engagement with life by giving yourself space to process, integrate, and simply exist without constant stimulation. Notice how you feel after time in silence versus after time in noise. After scrolling for an hour, after a loud party, after constant conversation, how do you feel? Drained, scattered, like your energy has leaked out in 1,000 directions. But after sitting in silence, after a quiet walk, after an evening alone with no input, you feel gathered, coherent, like all the pieces of yourself have come back together. That's not coincidence. That's information. Your system is telling you what it needs, and it needs silence more than it needs stimulation now. Not because you're broken or depressed or avoiding something, because you're finally hearing the signal through all the static. By the way, our shared space of light and awareness is on its way to 100,000 people. Thank you to everyone who subscribes and brings this moment closer. Let's go deeper into what silence actually does. Most people think silence is absence. Absence of sound, absence of activity, absence of connection. They think choosing silence means choosing nothing, but that's backwards. Silence isn't empty. It's full of presence, full of awareness, full of the subtle movements and insights that get drowned out when noise takes over. Think about what happens in your mind when you're constantly consuming information. Podcasts while you work, music while you walk, videos while you eat, conversations filling every gap. Your mind doesn't have space to do anything with all that input. It just keeps receiving, processing in real time, reacting, but never actually integrating, never sorting through what matters and what doesn't, never finding its own rhythm. It's like trying to organize a closet while someone keeps throwing new clothes at you. You can't make sense of what you have because new stuff keeps arriving. Silence stops the incoming flow. Finally, your mind can sort through what's already there, process what happened, understand what you actually think and feel without new information constantly overriding it. This is why insights come in silence, why solutions appear when you stop trying, why clarity emerges in the shower or on quiet walks. Not because you're thinking harder, because you're finally giving your consciousness room to work. Here's the mechanism. Your brain has different modes. One mode is receptive. It takes in information from outside, listens, watches, learns, engages with external input. The other mode is integrative. It makes sense of what's already been received, connects dots, forms understanding, creates meaning from experience. Both modes are necessary, but they can't run at the same time. When you're constantly in receptive mode, consuming noise and information, your integrative mode never gets to run. All that experience piles up unprocessed. You end up confused, overwhelmed, not sure what you think or feel because you haven't had time to figure it out. Silence switches you into integrative mode. Your brain finally gets to do its other job, and that job is just as important as receiving new information, maybe more important. Because what good is all that input if you never understand it? What good are all those experiences if you never integrate them into wisdom? This is what's been missing for most people. They're drowning in information, but starving for understanding. and understanding only comes in silence. You've started to feel this. That's why silence became necessary. Not because you want less, because you want to actually digest what you already have. And here's what nobody talks about. The quality of your presence changes in silence. When there's constant noise, part of your attention is always on the external, always monitoring the sound, the input, the information coming in. You're never fully here because part of you is always somewhere else, processing what you're hearing or watching or reading. But in silence, all your attention comes back. Nothing is pulling you outward, so you land fully in the present moment, in your actual experience, in what is rather than what's being said about what is. This is why silence feels like coming home, because presence is home, and noise keeps you wandering in distraction. You know that feeling when you've been traveling and you finally get back to your own space? That exhale? That sense of finally being able to stop performing and just be? That's what silence gives you. But instead of coming home to a place, you're coming home to yourself. Every moment spent in noise is a moment spent slightly outside yourself. Observing, reacting, engaging, but not fully inhabiting your own experience. Every moment in silence is a moment of return, coming back to the center, back to direct experience, back to the simplicity of just being alive without needing to do anything with it. And once you taste that, once you really feel what it's like to be fully present with yourself, noise starts to feel hollow. Interesting maybe, sometimes necessary, but hollow. Because you realize that no matter how good the content, no matter how fascinating the conversation, none of it touches what's available in silence. The depth, the clarity, the simple fact of your own consciousness aware of itself. That's not something you can get from outside input. It only emerges when everything else stops. This is why silence became your favorite place. Not because you're avoiding the world, because you've discovered something in silence that the world can't offer. A quality of being that only exists when you stop reaching outward and simply rest in what's already here. And here's where it gets really interesting. Your relationship with other people changes when silence becomes your baseline. You used to need constant connection, texts, calls, plans, social activity. Time alone felt like missing out, like you weren't really living unless you were engaging with others. But now, you can be with people without needing anything from them. You're not using conversation to fill a void or distract from discomfort. You're not seeking validation or entertainment or escape. You're just present, with them, with yourself, with whatever is happening. And that presence is way more connecting than all the noise-filled interaction you used to have. People feel it when you're actually there, not performing, not trying to be interesting, not managing your image or controlling the conversation, just present. That's rare. Most people spend their whole lives having conversations without really being there. Part of them is always somewhere else, planning what to say next, worrying about how they're being perceived, replaying something from earlier, thinking about something coming later. But when you've spent real time in silence, when you've learned to be present with yourself, you can be present with others too. And that changes everything. Connection stops being about filling time and starts being about meeting, actually seeing each other, actually sharing presence instead of just exchanging words. This is why some relationships fall away when you start choosing silence. not because you've become cold or distant, because those relationships were built on noise, on constant activity and distraction, on avoiding real presence through perpetual doing. When you're no longer willing to maintain that pattern, those relationships can't continue. There's nothing holding them together. And that's okay. Better than okay. Because the relationships that remain and the new ones that form are built on something real, on presence, on the willingness to be together in silence as much as in sound. You don't lose connection by choosing silence. You lose false connection and make space for real connection. The kind that doesn't need constant noise to feel meaningful. Here's what changes when silence becomes home. First, you stop consuming information compulsively. You realize that most of what you were taking in wasn't making your life better. It was just filling space, numbing discomfort, giving you something to think about so you didn't have to feel. Now you can feel. So you don't need the constant input. You read less but understand more. You engage with fewer ideas but let them actually sink in. Second, you stop fearing boredom because you realize boredom was never the problem. The problem was not being able to be with yourself. And now you can. So those empty moments aren't threatening. They're opportunities to rest, to integrate, to simply be. Third, you stop needing external validation because silence taught you how to validate yourself, how to check in with your own experience and trust what's there. You don't need constant feedback from others because you have direct access to your own truth. Fourth, your decisions get clearer because you're not making them from the middle of noise and confusion. You drop into silence, let everything settle, and the right choice becomes obvious, not through analysis, through clarity. Fifth, your energy stabilizes. You're not getting pulled in 1,000 directions by different voices and demands. You know your center. You come back to it regularly. So you move through life from a place of groundedness instead of constant reaction. This is what's available when silence becomes your baseline. Not withdrawal from life, deeper engagement with life, from a place of presence instead of distraction. But here's the paradox. You have to be willing to let go of noise to discover this. You have to be willing to feel uncomfortable at first, to face what comes up in silence, to learn how to be with yourself without distraction. Most people aren't willing to do that, so they stay in noise, and they wonder why they feel scattered, anxious, disconnected from themselves. You did the work, maybe without realizing it. You chose silence even when it was uncomfortable. You sat with yourself even when your nervous system was screaming to reach for distraction. And now you're on the other side, where silence isn't something you have to force yourself to tolerate. It's something you actively seek because you know what it gives you. This is transformation, not the loud, dramatic kind, the quiet kind, the kind that happens when you finally stop running and let yourself land. And once you land, you realize this is where you were trying to get to all along, not some external destination, just here, present, in silence, with yourself, finally home. If this video changed something in you, write in the comments, silence is home. Write it as your promise to yourself. Nobody